this dress years ago, like 7, 8 years ago. I'm not even sure. I'd have to go back and look. Maybe even farther back than that. It's View A is the one I make. It's just right at the knee. It's a perfect length. It's super flattering. This is great if you're a curvy girl like I am. It just fits nice and it looks nice on the body. So I'm gonna show you how to do this, and we're going to make it in this. This beautiful black and white polka dot it's a heavier weight t-shirt knit. It's cotton. This is gonna wear great. It's not gonna wrinkle. Which is what I love, because I like to travel with clothes like this. They don't wrinkle and they wear well and they breathe and they're comfy and soft, and you still look cute, and you can throw on a pair of tennis shoes with it, or you can throw on a pair of sandals and you look dressed up. My favorite kind of clothes. So we're going to put this together. It's going to be a fast one. This is a one-day project for me. It might be for you too. There's not a lot to it. I'm going to be serging it almost completely together, other than the top stitching around the neck and the hem and the sleeve. But you can completely put this together on the sewing machine if you have a zigzag. So fast and easy. I did notice this morning when I was getting dressed that I have a lot of polka dots in my closet. I actually already have a black and white polka dot dress. I have 3 navy polka dot dresses. I have a coral polka dot dress. I have a red dress with big circles on it. I have a red and white polka dot top. I kind of have a thing for polka dots. Step 1 is to gather on the bodice, and you have 2 little circles here and here. You want to transfer those markings to your fabric so you know where to start and stop your gathers. And it's always best to do 2 rows of gathers. If you want a nice even look when you're ready to stitch it in, 2 rows is the way to go. You do 1 line of basting on the actual stitching line, and then the second one will be down from that, so it'll be between the cut edge and your final stitching line. So maybe 5/8 inch and 1 1/4 inch, something like that. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm also going to go ahead and do the same with the skirt. I'm going to insert a little information why. One of the things I do to help streamline when I'm making a video is all the gathering I can do at once, I will. So even though step 1 is just gathering under the bust in the front, I'll probably go ahead and do the gathering on both skirt pieces at the same time. It just makes things go a little faster. I'm doing all the same markings and I'm doing all the same stitching to speed up the sewing. And also, we change our machine settings. So it's very easy to go from your long basting stitch, go back to sew, and you're sewing with a long basting stitch. You have to restitch it. And once I get both of those things done, I will come back and show you the next step. Only a few minutes have passed, but I've done some things and made some decisions. First of all, there's no pockets in this, so I cut some. And because of the pattern having that waistband seam, the pocket's going to be kind of high, but I can catch the top of my pocket in it, and it'll make it more stable in this knit. I won't have sags on the sides because of that. I almost made the pocket deeper, but I really just want to be able to stick a phone in it. That's really the only purpose for it for me. So we did gathering stitches. Here's the skirt, just so you can see. I'm going to show on the wrong side because the black thread shows up better. So there's the gathering stitch on skirt pieces and on bodice. So it's at the bottom of the bodice down here, and there's my 2 little gather stitches. And now that they're in, we're going to kind of ignore them for a minute, and we're going to sew our shoulder seams together. It also shows on the pattern, this is the back, and it has a V back, and they show doing a little stay stitching right here, opening it up and doing a little stay stitching on this V, and that's not a bad idea. It just makes it more stable. The softer your knit, the more it's going to stretch. So if you want to go in and do a little, and it's only 1/4 inch in, there's a neck binding, so you don't use your full 5/8 on this. It's only 1/4 inch in the neckline area. So if you want to do a little quick stay stitch there, you can. But we're going to now pin together our shoulders. This also has elastic in it, and I went ahead and cut all my elastic pieces, so I have them set aside. There's a little bit of elastic in the shoulder, and there's a little bit along the waistline. So I've cut both of those pieces, or 3 of those, 1 for each shoulder and the waistline. Now here's our back, and we're just going to pin together, right sides together at the shoulders, front and back. And the way they have it, the way that they show it is they do a double straight stitch. You can do a teeny tiny zigzag instead on your 5/8 inch, or you can come to your serger and you can serge the 5/8 inch. If you serge it, you serge off your extra seam allowance. So there's no altering if you serge off your extra seam allowance. So remember that when working at the serger. I'm going to serge mine together, and then after that we're going to apply the elastic. So let me get my shoulder seams together so you can see what it looks like, and then I'll show you what it looks like to zigzag on our elastic in there, and that's going to help gather that up and make it stable. So I've pinned my shoulder seams like this so you can see this is how it looks. This is our little crossover. You can see my gathers, and I've actually marked, see here's my little center front, so these little center fronts will get lined up on each other later. So transferring all of those markings is really helpful for the putting together. Here's my shoulder seam. Here's my little piece of elastic. Here's our directions. So they've stitched the shoulder seam. They have you cut your elastic according to pattern piece 3. And then they show sewing the elastic from edge to edge. This is the issue that I have with that. And I didn't do this in my red one that I made. This is the neckline. So we're going to have a piece that comes across the neckline, so it's not so much of an issue that it hangs out here. But over here, this is supposed to turn back and stitch, and if you have that piece of elastic all the way out to here, it's going to cause issues at your shoulder for turning back and stitching. So I'm going to actually stop my elastic a little before that to give me room. Now what they've done is they have the little dots, and you're supposed to go from dot to dot, and you have elastic hanging over, and you can trim that out later. That works too. You can make your choice which way you want to do it. Tack it down, stretch it across, and what happens is it gathers up your shoulder for you, just like that. So I'm going to do that next. So here's the shoulder with the elastic in it, according to the directions. This is what it looks like, my elastic, and you can see it doesn't really gather or look like much of anything. It's ugly. And I now remember, after having put in one shoulder, that I ended up taking the elastic out in my other dress, running a basting stitch, and then just zigzagging the elastic over however much I wanted it gathered. I'm going to take this one out. Here's the other shoulder. I've already run a basting stitch, so I'm going to go ahead and gather this up to what I want it to be, lay my elastic flat on top of that, and then zigzag over the elastic. It creates a much prettier effect. So, gathered, I've pinned down my elastic. This is what it looks like on the other side. And now I'm ready to zigzag it on. And I did leave a little space here for turn. I'm going to finish this off with my serger and turn it back for hemming. This is the armscye, and this is the neckline. I'm not worried about it in the neckline, other than I didn't gather all the way. I made sure there's a little flat space here because that's where that little neckline facing is going to come on, and I don't want gathers into that. I need to make sure it's nice and flat where the seam allowance is. This is the gathered and elastic applied, and this is how it looks. And you can see how you sort of have a little bit. Can you see the more even gather? And then here's the one done by the pattern. Mostly it just curls. So that's how the one with the pattern's done. It won't even lay open. I'm really struggling with it. So I'm going to rip this one off. This is done according to the pattern. I'm going to rip it off and do it my method. If you have a very lightweight knit, this one may just have too much body. It may work fine, but with this one, it's not working at all. We have elastic in our shoulders. Shoulder cinched up. All right, we're ready for pattern piece number 4. It's our next step. So I've got our shoulders, our little elasticized shoulders in, and now we're going to take this little fork-tongued looking thing. We're going to put them right sides together, and we're going to sew that little tiny V. After interpreting the pattern piece, it is 5/8 of an inch. So we're going to sew 5/8 of an inch seam, and then we're going to slit down inside the center of this. So let me sew my little 5/8 inch. We are just going to straight stitch this. We're not going to do this at the serger, and it's fine. Just do a small straight stitch because it's a neckline. This neckline is open and wide. It's not like a crew neck that you have to pull open and slide over your head, so you don't have to worry about the stretch on this. You should be fine. All right, so I'm going to sew this real quick, and then I'll show you how this works, because it's a little confusing looking at the pattern. It took 2 passes for me to get this straight in the way I want it, but now we're going to clip straight down into this so that it opens up, and it's going to kind of look like this. What it's not showing is this little center part is actually where it's cut open, and it's going to want to fold over naturally on itself. So here's the clip. And now when we open this up, see how it wants to just fold in half on itself, and it's going to make a perfect little V at the bottom. So here's how it looks. It's a little hard for me to show you with one hand, but it's not perfection, but that's it. So I'm going to have to do a little trimming down here, but now it's ready for us to pin on to the neckline and stitch it down. So here's our little neckline. This is what it looks like on the inside. And we're going to just sort of hold open our little seam allowances and hold them to each other. So now can you see what a nice little V we have? This little V is going to fit into our neckline V. Here's the center back. So we're going to, this is why we stay stitched. We're going to just take a little snip, just like we did on the other one, up to but not through. See how that opens up? And then we can take this neckline that's folded beautifully in half, and this is going to fold and fit onto this. So we're going to do right sides together, and we're going to have a little bit of that point hanging past. And you can sew this in one fell swoop all the way around if you want to, but I'm going to do one side and then the other. I just think it works better. So we're going to just pin these edges together. See how that pins on? We're going to start in this point and sew all the way across to the edge. I'm going to put some pins in it, pin this thing into submission. And this can be serged on at the 1/4 inch, or you will be sewing it at the sewing machine. You can do a tiny zigzag, or you can even straight stitch this because it's stable. It's a neckline that's not going to get stretched a lot. It's sort of up to you how you want to stitch this. I personally am going to serge this. I'm going to actually baste it at the sewing machine first and then go back and do the serging. So we're just going to pin this down, and it will come all the way to this point down here, like so, and pin on. And what will happen is this will flip back once it's sewn at the 1/4 inch, and see you'll have this little edge like this, and that's our pretty little neckline edge. Here's our neckline. Here's the little V. Here's our facing. See how it sticks up all the way around from the inside? It looks like this. Now I did serge it, but right here at that point I went in with my sewing machine and I did stitch this little section with the sewing machine just to make sure I had a good nice point. Now I haven't pressed it yet, but this is how it looks at the center back. So very pretty. All right, so that's together. Woot, neckline done. Now it's up to you. If you want to, you can flip back the seam allowance here and you can top stitch it down all along here, or you can just leave it just like this. I believe they show you top stitching it on the pattern, but it's a personal choice if you want to top stitch or not. It will keep this from flipping a little bit if you do top stitch it. And where we have the elastic, and they show the elastic in there, the elastic does make it stiff, and it does make it difficult to turn back this little section. Difficult to turn back this little section right here. Can you see how that's stiffy stiff? And then when I want to push it back, if I don't stitch that down, it may make a little bit of a bubble right there. Okay, next step is we're going to take our markings for our center front, and you can see I have it right here, and we're going to overlap them right over left. So here's my right side, right over left. We're going to find our little marking. There it is. We're going to line them on top of each other like so. And we're ready to pin it down and baste this so that they stay in place. So this is, we're now overlapping so it looks like a wrap. And make sure that you've got your facings. See how my facing wants to flip over? Make sure that you either top stitch it down or that you pin it really well so that when you're ready to stitch, you can. So it's going to look just like that when we're stitching it. There's our 2 layers. See our little notches? Can you see them right there lined up? And we're ready to go. Quick close-up of top stitching. So that's my neck edge. Now there's lots of ways you can do this. I did just a 1/4 inch, so I have a nice full facing that sticks out, and I like it. I just think that's attractive. In this, it's hardly noticeable too. This black and white polka dot just kind of makes everything disappear, but that makes it nice and flat. So now when I'm ready to match everything up, this is going to be pretty. And I did this on the other one, because it's a wrap and I'm a full busted girl. Once I get the wrap done, I come back and top stitch the 2 layers together along this, and it just keeps it from pulling apart in the bust line. I have a bodice. Here's our little elastic shoulders. I did the neckline so that you have a little facing that sticks out, so it's sort of like a trimmed out neckline. They actually have you folding everything in, closing it, but we're working with a knit, and there's no reason to go. You can certainly follow that rule if you want to, but I think this looks great from the inside. It's all finished off. I did do the top stitching, and it's faster, but it doesn't look homemade, it looks handmade. We're to this point. And I went ahead, overlapped, and I basted this little edge down so that everything's lined up the way it belongs at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and go to my serger, and I'm just going to serge around my armscye. It just has us folding back the armscye and top stitching it, and I want that edge finished. They actually fold it twice, which you can do with a knit because it's soft enough you can get a double fold. I'm going to only fold it once and serge it. I just think that works better for me. So I'm going to go ahead and serge it now so that it's ready to go. So this is where we're at. We're now ready to start applying our little waistbands. Here's our little waistband, and it has lots of markings to transfer on it. So here's our number 5, and there's a whole bunch of markings at the top. That's where our gathers are going to go. So these little circles will correspond to the circles on the bodice. And then these circles down here will correspond to the circles on the skirts. We're going to go ahead and do our waistband, and in doing that we do our front gathers. I'm going to get those prepped and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm pinning on the waistband to the bodice, and this is the front, and I've got my little notches lined up, I've got my center front lined up, and I'm just working my way around. And then there's a little spot that shows where the gathers go. So here you can see my gathers on the bodice side, so that when you flip this over, boy, you cannot see that in the camera. Okay, here's my little bust line gathers, here's my neckline. It's almost invisible, I can see. So that's how it's gonna look. All right, slipped it on real quick, it's still open, but I have my neckline done. I've got it basted. I have a little pin up here because before I go any farther, I've got the little waistband on. You can see my gathers for the bust line. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch. This pin is to help me know where to do it. I just laid it flat on the table and found where it laid perfectly, and I'm going to top stitch back over my stitching that I've already done to hold this down so that it doesn't gap open, because without it, it opens quite easily, and I don't want that. Now you can pin this on your body, but I find that if you pin it on your body, you're going to end up with little pooks in weird places, so I lay it flat on the table, get them to overlap where they want to, stick the pin in it, and that almost always lays perfectly on me. So I'm going to repin it real quick, top stitch it, and then we're ready to start adding skirts. But we have pockets I'm going to stick on there too. Okay, I have the front band on, just from the inside, stitched on, everything's stitched down. Here's the back. There's no gathering or anything in the back. And now I've just finished my sleeve edge, and now we're ready to sew our side seams together like this, and then we're moving on to the skirt. Before we can do anything with the skirt, we have to attach the pockets that I cut out. Ta-da! We're just going to pin them on, and I'm going to just straight stitch down this little section. I'm going to not go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to leave myself a little seam allowance for going around the pockets later. But for the fronts and the backs, I've just got pockets lined up, right sides together, and we're going to stitch them down. Here's my pockets. I've gone ahead and just attached pockets front and back in the same spot all the way around, right sides together. I've gone ahead and pulled a few gathers. I'll turn it to the back so you can see the gathers started to pull that. Make sure you mark. I have a little marking here for my center front, center back. Makes it much easier to when it's time to attach it to this. So we're going to do side seams, and then we're going to start putting our skirt together. I'm actually going to make the skirt because they just sew around a circle at the waistband, and then we make the little elastic casing. So putting skirt together, putting side seams together on the bodice, so we'll have sort of two separate pieces, and then we'll be ready to start marrying them. And okay, here's the band, here's our little gathers, here's where it crosses over, and I've stitched it down so it won't come open. Here's the back, there's no band in the back. From the inside, it's a lot easier to see because the contrast. So here's the inside bodice, you can see the band, here's the back. Just got our little side seams. So I'm going to now take my skirt pieces and put them together front to back, so around the pocket and down. I'm going to do parts of that on the sewing machine and serge parts of it, and I'll show you, just because I want to get that little corner where the pocket comes in nice and tight. So I'm going to serge the whole thing, and then I'm going to come back and do a straight stitch up a little bit, and that just gives, if you don't do that, it tends to have a little weird curve at the pocket and it won't lay real pretty, and it's on the side seam and I want it to lay pretty. So I'm going to put all those things together and then we'll be ready to put them, marry the two pieces. So here is one side serged around, all right, but I've got to come back right here and I'm going to, you can see my pocket line where I just straight stitched the little pocket piece on first. I'm going to come back and I'm going to kind of connect these two lines with my straight stitch just a little bit to make it nice and smooth right there, and it just gives a better transition, because this pocket, this is the back of the skirt. This pocket, all of these pieces are going to fold to the front. So here's my pocket pieces on the front of the skirt, here's the back of the skirt, so that the front will look nice and smooth at the side seam. Okay, and then this is what it looks like before I sew. So here we are, ready to go. It's just straight stitched on. Got my little pocket ears hanging out. So I serged all the way around the best I could through here, and I actually kind of stopped right there and then started again, so that's not, there's like a little hole, which is taken care of when I do that straight stitch. And then I came back and just serged this on the back side. This front side is actually folded to the inside, so I didn't even worry about serging it, but you can serge it even first if you want to. It's up to you. It doesn't have to be though, because it's going to be completely enclosed like so when it gets stitched down to the front of the skirt. So I'm going to finish those things up and then I'll show you pinning this skirt to the bodice. So I have a skirt. I've already gathered in the front but not in the back. And you don't have to pre-gather. I had just started messing with it a little bit to see how I like the look and how it was gathering up with this heavyweight fabric. So here's the skirt already put together. I've got my little pockets towards the front. I went ahead and finished off the hem and put the hem in, so it's already a pre-hemmed skirt. So once I get the waistband done, it's done, because on the bodice the neckline's finished, I've already got my side seams done, and I went ahead and finished off my little arm size, my little armholes here. So bodice is done except for at the waist, and skirt is done except for the waist. So we are in the home stretch. So I'm going to now open up my bodice to the right side. I'm going to flip it around to the right side, and then I'm going to match my center front little marking to the center front of my skirt. So I have a little notch here, and I'm going to match that up and start pinning my skirts together. Now I put a pocket in. If you didn't do the pocket, then you're just going to match your side seam to the side seam of the yoke, or it's really the side seam of the shirt. You've got a yoke in there, but side seam to side seam, center front to center front. Then you'll start pulling in your gathers. There's little markings either on the bodice back or on the yoke piece that show where the gathers are supposed to fit. So everything's marked for you. I mean, you just have to transfer them, but it's on the pattern to help you get everything lined up. So I'm going to get mine pinned, and when it's pinned, I'll show you the pinning before I stitch it in, because this does have us put in a little elastic casing in it. Look at all the pins. All right, the skirt is on the outside, and this is the front of the skirt. You can see my little pockets pull to the front. And the little gathers, they actually go just slightly under the pocket, just a little bit. And then here's the back. Trying not to knock out any of my pins. Here's the back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to straight stitch around on that 5/8 inch line. Or you can do a teeny tiny little zigzag, just slightly offset from a straight stitch, just to give it a little more stretch if you need to. it's been working great for me. I'm having no issues with my straight stitch at all. I don't need it to be super stretchy, but it does move just a little bit, so I'm not real worried about pop stitches. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew the top part for the casing, but leave a little hole so we can fish our elastic through. So let me get the bottom sewn. Let me get this casing put together for you so you can see it. Once I've done that, I am going to still kind of come back and serge this outer edge because it compacts everything. So see all these thick layers? When I overlock over that, it just compresses it and makes it nice and flat, so it won't add any fullness to the waistline, because there's a lot of gathers on this waistline. This is a heavier weight knit than I used the last time. The last time I used a really fine jersey knit that's super drapey, so I hope this hangs as pretty as the other one. It has a lot of weight to it, so I think it will, but it's going to be a little different. So here's our waistband stitched in. Hopefully you can see. Here's my seam. And then I went ahead and serged the edge. So here's the space between, and that is where my casing is going to be. And you can see I actually left a little hole from the serging, and that's where I'm going to slide the elastic in. If you chose to do a pocket like I did, I'm going to go to the inside. Here's the shirt side. The elastic is going to go between the shirt and the skirt. So when you go to put your elastic in, turn it so you can see the bodice part. So, and that's what the elastic is going to go next to. And to do your elastic, we've done this lots of times. It's got to be a skinny little safety pin because we have a skinny little casing. So it's got to fit through that casing. We're just going to put a safety pin on one end, and we're just fishing it into that hole between the shirt, the bodice, and the skirt. And we're going to just push it all the way around until it comes out the other end. So we're just going to push this through. It's a little thick in areas because we've got all those gathers. So I'm just going to fish this around, and then we'll, when we get the other side out, we'll take our tails, we'll overlap them, zigzag it together, and then I'll serge this shut right here where my serging hole is for my casing, and my dress is done. I'm so excited. I'm so close to being done. What time is it? So it's 3 o'clock. So this dress took me today, let's see, I started at 9, and I took a lunch break and I hung out with my kid for a little bit, so just a few hours really, not a lot of time. And I did make some mistakes, like there was a couple times where I like pinning my pockets on, and I pinned one of the pockets to the hem instead of the waist because I had the skirt flipped. You know, we make mistakes. And then of course I didn't like the shoulder, and I had to take that shoulder out. So I did have a little seam ripping in there too, but pretty quick little pattern to put together. Can you see it's starting to pull this in just a little bit? It just makes it fit better. It doesn't make it gathery in that yoke. It just gives a little bit of stability to this waist, which helps it hold up the skirt weight, and it makes it fit the body a little better. It just really is flattering. Almost around. See how the waist is just a little bit elasticy. All right, we're going to take our two little edges here, and they just overlap like this, and we're just going to zigzag that together and then just pull it down to the inside and close up our casing, and we have a finished garment. Back in a minute to show you what it looks like. My original one that I made in the red jersey knit that's real soft. Jersey knit wears well though. It lasts and lasts and lasts. So if you don't get a snag in it, you're good. This one's a cotton knit, so it wears a little differently, but it feels great. And it's because it's cotton spandex, it breathes, even though it's black. So I can see this being another staple dress. I'm glad I put a pocket in it. That's something I'm always sad I don't have in my dresses, is a pocket. I made one recently and I forgot to put a pocket in it. So easy to add a pocket, especially when it has a waistband like this. The pocket is suspended from that waistband, and so it's nice and stable. Great pattern, easy to follow directions, I think. And if you get stuck, you've got this video to help you out. See you next week for another fun video.